Uh-huh.
Well, then let's begin, Bruce. First of all, thank you very much once again for taking my interview. The first thing, the first case related thing that I do want to ask you today is something very special to me because you play in one of my favorite Kiss albums, which is Revenge. This album is very, very important to me for
Mhm.
so many things. And I do want to ask you, first of all, this is a return to play heavy metal, really, really heavy sound. During the 80s, while playing hard rock and glam and all that stuff. How was it for you to go back to this kind of sound?
Well, Revenge really, without Bob Ezrin and a real commitment to making it just sound really, really special, maybe it would have been a disappointment. Fortunately, uh, they, Gene and Paul and Bob were very clear that it should be really a strong rock record. Don't know if it's heavy metal or not, but either way, a heavy, powerful album. And it started with the drums being not a Creatures of the Night drums, but Eric Singer's drums are very in your face. You know what I mean? They're very strong, well recorded. I remember Bob Ezrin brought in a special engineer just to capture the drums that way. And Ezrin was the kind of producer that is very, very unique. I find he's like a mad professor of sorts. Um, I really studied and absorbed everything I could from him because I just knew that he was involved with some brilliant albums. He was also can orchestrate and write songs. So you really have the whole package with him. And he had Gene and Paul's respect. Okay.
Mhm.
So that made him an important part of that album. And I actually think that one takeaway that I had about Revenge was there was never a compromise over anything.
Okay.
There were many songs that were explored, and then certain things were tried, and then looked at, and then said no. So, in other words, there was so much attention to detail in every way, from the lyrics to the words to the solo to the feel of it. Um, that I found, um, the record really could reach this high level of quality, that I was so proud of. So, and I know Ezrin enjoyed working with me, and he challenged me a lot. But there's so many great songs, and like I mentioned earlier, it was such a learning experience for me to be around somebody that can engineer, write, produce, arrange, and it was a long recording, over the course of almost a year in some ways. We had the tragedy of Eric Carr
Yeah.
towards the end of it. And all I could say though is I'm super proud of that album. I'm sad that it wasn't platinum. It should have been more popular, but
Totally.
very happy that I was able to uh, be a big part of that record.
Which one is your favorite song from this record?
Well, I love Unholy because that sets this, kind of, it sets the mood. You know what I mean? That like,
Yeah.
Gina's back. You know what I mean? And we're gonna rip your head off. And then again, God gave rock and roll to you, even though it came out as a soundtrack thing. But it's a little different mix, by the way, on Revenge. There's
Yeah.
so many layers and so many different guitar parts on that, the leads, and I love Spit, and Heart of Chrome's got great riffs. Domino is so much fun. Just there isn't a bad song on that record for me. Although I actually didn't play the lead guitar on Every Time I Look at You, but you heard me do it on MTV. I could play what Dick Wagner played. And there's an interesting story with that, but you'll have to wait for my book. Okay.
I'll wait for your book.
Yeah, wait for my book. Yeah.
Well, now after Revenge, the next studio album is one that I believe it doesn't get discussed so much, which is Carnival of Souls. It's a very interesting venture on the band, definitely. It's a
Mhm.
departure from everything.
Oh yeah.
It was closer to this grunge sound of
Mhm.
the early 90s. What can you tell me about Carnival of Souls?
Just recently I answered a question about that album, and of course, now it's all over the internet and people are chatting about it. I love that they're talking about it, even if you don't like it. Okay. You know, Revenge wasn't the success, like I mentioned earlier, that it should have been. Okay. And we obviously toured. It wasn't big, big. We did some international dates, always big. But, I know that Gene and Paul want to define a little bit more their success with the American tour, right? So by the time, of course, we still had, not me personally, but Gene and Paul still had the record deal. So they're like, okay, um, where's the next album? Music was changing. It was getting darker. Gene liked that. Okay. Gene was fascinated with some of the Soundgarden and even Radiohead with that song "Creep." He used to
Oh, yeah.
love that. Yeah. Um, and I do feel there was a bit of a disillusion about what the future for Kiss should be. And then, of course, MTV Unplugged happened and the reunion, and they knew that they were going to go do that. But in the meantime, Gene, Eric Singer, and myself would keep going into the studio trying ideas. And Gene was writing kind of darker, wild stuff. And I was embracing that and helping. Eric loved it. Eric just wants to play. And we had to record. So now the direction kind of is this darker, meaner, uglier version of Kiss. Paul not so comfortable with it, but then he comes up with a great riff like for Master and Slave. And then he writes a song for his son Evan, I Will Be There. I started to work on a lot of riffs, and I knew a really good songwriter named Kurt Cuomo, who Paul introduced me to because he helped Paul with some other kind of songwriting, not for Kiss. And then he's helping contribute. So that's how we got Paul involved. Okay. Of course, it slams right into the reunion tour. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So now the attention about when it's being finished is like, well, the record company paid us to do this. Here it is. Bruce even sings a song, but we have the reunion tour first. You know what I mean? Which was going to be huge. So it gets put on the shelf. Obviously, by the time it came out, Kiss was going to stay in makeup. So it was just a very weird time. And I'm still proud of the record. I kind of heard it mixed a little differently because I have a lot of the early versions of us in the studio
Okay.
before it was mixed and mastered, and it sounded more open to me. But Toby was going for a certain thing, okay, because he had such great success with Alice in Chains and a few other bands. So, like I said, an unusual record for Kiss, but so is The Elder.
I
you
like
know,
that record.
yeah. And if you like heavy music, I think you're going to get that we were we were totally dedicated to making a great record, although it isn't your more typical, Kiss album with anthems. Jungle, I'm very proud of.
It's a
Okay. And that
great
was the
song.
radio song, right? So, what can I say? An unusual footnote of Kiss, an unusual record, but I'm proud of it, and I like in many ways that it was kind of almost forgotten the final sessions. You know what I mean? It has an interesting place in history, though, so I'm proud of it.
This is the only album where you sing a song.
Hmm.
Why is that? Why you never wanted to sing before?
I look, quite honestly, like Peter Criss could sing, Ace could sing. I got in the band. I just did some backgrounds. I never ran around saying, I want to sing a song. Eric Carr is a great singer, and they didn't really use him for that, which they should have, but they did on Beth when we did the Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits. But here's how it happened. And it's a fascinating story, but I worked on that song with Gene for a very long time. There's even a YouTube about it where I'm showing, during the pandemic, I tried to stay as busy as I could. So I was doing a lot of Kiss stuff. And what was interesting about that song was it kept evolving from an early version to another one to another one. Gene wrote the lyrics and I loved them. And I knew what the melody was. So on one of the last versions towards the end, to show Gene, here's the new arrangement that we just worked on. And I have then the vocals are on it just for reference.
Okay.
For reference. Okay. Not for the record, But then Toby Wright, who's the co-producer with Gene and Paul, he hears it. He hears that I know deep inside of me, And I put a little effect on my voice because I'm not a lead singer like Gene and Paul. But Toby was like, Bruce has got to sing that song. And they were like, what? Why? Bruce has got to sing the song. Okay. Now, at the time, Gene and Paul knew that they were going to do the reunion tour. And I almost wonder, I walk alone. Can't you see? I wonder, I don't know that, but how prophetic. Okay. All right. Let Bruce sing it, right? So,
Appropriate.
yeah. And I'm always curious about that. But of course, I said, sure. It fits the lyrics and it fits the mood of the song. I'm more proud of the music and the fact that I was able to arrange a piece for Kiss that has backwards sections and the drums are backwards and then some of the guitars are backwards and that picking guitar part, one is forward, one is backwards. There's so many creative things that I stole from Kiss and Queen and I'm sorry, not Kiss, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, just things like that we really did a completely unusual kind of song. You know what I mean? I mean, I just think it was somewhat experimental for Kiss too. So I'm on it. Makes sense.
Awesome. Well, Bruce, I believe our time is almost over, but I do
Mhm.
want to ask you for one last um, part of his story, history that I find very interesting, which is the MTV Unplugged. To me, it doesn't get the love it deserves because I believe it's one of the few times that Gene and Paul truly wanted to explore some of the more obscure Kiss
Mhm.
tracks, like A World
Yep.
Without Heroes. No? Uh, what can you tell me about the recording of this show?
Well, I was so proud of the performance by Eric Singer, myself, and Paul sang incredible, and Gene was always solid, but I thought Paul really shined. And then with Eric and I coming off of the convention tour, about the convention tour, and
Yes.
that was just, we didn't really prepare a lot of stuff, but by doing it and then having the fans play Going Blind, or whatever it was, and then all of a sudden we're fooling around with these songs. What an interesting kind of like organic way to then, when approached by MTV, the good part is that they saw it was amazing, and it made the band do deeper tracks, which you want, right? Done acoustically though, okay.
Yeah.
But then MTV on the bad side said, but we don't want to do it unless you have like a special appearance by Ace and Peter, you know. And the next thing you know, the reunion tour happens, okay. So all that was happening at the same time. I'm so proud of the album. It's and the video of it. It's kind of out of print, not the record. You can, find the CD and you
Yeah.
can buy the music always. The video itself is hard to find, which is unfortunate. Same
Yep.
for Animalized Live, it's hard to find.
I don't
But
have that one. Yeah.
yeah, I mean you can see it on YouTube and stuff like that. But the point is, um, I did find that it was like a really great concert from the band with the gimmick of course, and now Ace and Peter are going to do a song, and then we're all going to play together. You know, there was so much um, history that night done
Yeah.
because we would play Domino acoustically, but we and I Still Love You, but then we play Going Blind and Plaster Caster, which I never played before. So something I'm so proud of, and I will tell you, it took me years to want to revisit it and watch it. And once the pandemic happened, and I had time to um, just relive my history, I was like, oh my God! My wife Lisa never saw it. I popped in my Blu-ray version or whatever, and we watched, and I was just like, wow, loved it. Okay, so I super proud of that performance. And sadly, it was my last big show with Kiss, you know, when you think about it. So, because then it was the recording and then the reunion tour and then bye bye, Eric and Bruce. You know, of course, they asked Eric Singer to come back when Peter was not being agreeable. So, what can I say? At least I left on a high note, you know.
Totally. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a total high note.
sure.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much for
Hmm.
your time. I do want to ask you for one small favor. If
Hmm.
you could please send an invitation to the audience that is watching this video through our website, which is called Pólvora, and
Okay.
inviting them to the Mexico City show, it will be great.
So how do you say the name of your?
I will spell it. It's Polbora.
Okay, Polbora.
You get it.
Polbora. Okay. Hey, everybody watching Polbora. It's Bruce Kulick here in Las Vegas, but I want to see you in Mexico City and in Monterrey because I'm going to be there. First, there's the Rockland event in Mexico City, then my, you know, performance at La Maraca, I think it's called, and then in Monterrey at the Cafe Iguana. And those 2 nights of my shows are going to be very exciting because I'm going to be doing my history for all of you to sing along and let's have a party together in Mexico. So I hope to see you soon.
So cool. And I hope to meet you there, Bruce.